You know, I'm here, right? I wake up just having some coffee, trying to go about my day. And I open the news, my own website, and it says the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services purchases $290 million in nuclear emergency drugs. The United States has purchased $290 million in nuclear emergency drugs. It is a drug to help you with acute radiation sickness. I wonder why. Now, there's a couple reasons why this may be. It could be that nuclear annihilation is upon us, and at any moment, Vladimir Putin could slam his hand on the red button and fire a bunch of nukes in the air and just rain hellfire across the entire United States, for which we will need to ingest these drugs when we are dying of radiation sickness. That is, after, of course, we have to deal with all of the vaporized bodies of the major cities. Now, I don't know if that's probable, but at least the U.S. is preparing for the worst, I guess. It could also be there's no real big threat from nuclear war. I know a lot of people don't want to believe it's possible. They think it would be suicide for Putin. And maybe then it's just a good old U.S. dumping your tax dollars into big pharma because they found a reason to do it. You know, they would love to give guaranteed contracts to big pharmaceutical companies. And now they can be like, nuclear war? Well, we got to buy the drugs now. Either way, I don't really trust what the government is doing, but, you know, sometimes they're telling you exactly what they're doing. So we had this PSA in New York City about how to survive a nuclear strike. And everybody said, why? At a certain point, maybe it's just they're showing you their cards. NATO fully intends to press this war to the point where Putin may fire Z missiles. Let me reiterate that. What you may be seeing is not them trying to prepare you and saying Putin could be crazy. It's them being like, you realize we are going to destroy Russia and they will retaliate. Now, I don't know. I have no crystal ball. Well, actually, technically there's a crystal ball in the house because Ian owns one, but it doesn't actually show you the future. So here's a story from timcast.com. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services purchases $290 million in nuclear emergency drugs. 2004's Project BioShield Act grants BARDA authority to appropriate funds for the purpose of Nplate. Well, okay, then. If you haven't already, head over to timcast.com, become a member, support our work, our journalists like Christopher Bertman, who are working around the clock to get these stories up and fact-checked for you, and smash the like button. Here's the story. HHS is reportedly purchasing $290 million worth of Nplate, which treats blood cell injuries that accompany acute radiation syndrome in adult and pediatric patients. Nplate is produced by Thousand Oaks, California-based company Amgen USA Inc., with support from the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, BARDA, which is part of HHS administration's for Strategic Preparedness and Response, ASPR. The Project BioShield Act of 2004, designed to incentivize private industry to develop vital medical countermeasures by providing long-term funding in support of research and development, grants BARDA the authority to appropriate the funds. What do you mean appropriate the funds? Whose money are you stealing? ARS, also known as radiation sickness, or is it acute radiation syndrome, occurs when a person's entire body is exposed to a high dose of penetrating radiation, reaching internal organs in a matter of seconds. Symptoms of ARS injuries include impaired blood clotting as a result of low platelet counts, which can lead to uncontrolled and life-threatening bleeding. To reduce radiation-induced bleeding, Nplate stimulates the body's production of platelets. The drug can be used to treat adults and children. Nplate is also approved for adult and pediatric patients with immune thrombocytopenia, a blood disorder resulting in low platelet counts. Repurposing drugs for acute radiation syndrome that also are approved for a commercial indication helps to sustain availability of the product and improves healthcare provider familiarity with the drug. The question, I suppose, is, are we going to get nuked? Well, we'll see. HHS announcement comes after months of rising tensions in the Russian-Ukraine conflict, with Russian President Vladimir Putin suggesting the possible use of nuclear weapons in an effort to secure a win against Ukraine. On Friday, the Russian president signed treaties to annex 4 Ukrainian regions occupied by Russian forces. Yeah. We know this. I want to assuage your fears, my friends. Your government deeply, deeply cares about you. No. I know. Don't laugh. Your government does deeply care about you. I mean, not about your rights or your freedoms, your thoughts, your ideas, your families, your faith. No, they care about the labor you can provide them. And that's, care, I guess. I mean, look, I have chickens. You guys know I do. And I actually do care about them. I do not want harm to befall my chickens. I actually do care. Now, I don't think that the government cares about you as much as any random person would care about their chickens. I mean, keep in mind, a person may care about their chickens. They'll still eat them. But, they get those eggs every morning. That's the point. To be serious, the United States government does care about you insofar as your labor props up the economy, and they can use that to develop weapons and strengthen their interests. It's kind of insane how this country, what this country has turned into, what any country really has turned into. It's one of the problems, I think, of massive population expansion. I really do think so. Not that I think that we have too many people. I mean, I may facetiously post on Twitter there's too many people. The more people you have, the more specialties you have, and the more we can expand technology and maybe one day reach the stars. But there is a problem of governance when you have too many people, because what's happened now, you go back, way back in the day, you have the founding fathers being all like, we should be in charge of ourselves. The crown doesn't care about us. And it was true. They didn't. The king, I think it was King George III, had so much going on that he really just didn't pay attention to the colonies. Insofar that the colonies kept filing petitions for a redress of grievances, and the king was like, I don't care. So finally they were like, then we declare independence. And it wasn't just that they were like, we have a right to govern ourselves. It was like, you're not listening or doing what we need to be done, what needs to be done. You're not governing. So here's the best part. They send this Declaration of Independence, and the king sees it, and he's like, what is this? I have no time for this. And he passes it off to somebody else. I was reading, I was like, I wonder what the king's response is to being told that the colonies were declaring independence. He didn't care. He's like, you deal with it. And then somebody else was like, maybe we should stop this because they're kind of revolting and we kind of need the resources. And then you get a war. But he did not care. Right now, we have a government that doesn't actually care. They don't. They're an entity unto themselves, like a parasite leeching off of the labor of the American people. The founding fathers did not envision a country like that. When the founding fathers said we are going to make a new country, they actually cared. They deeply cared. I mean, they were arguing, they were fighting. They fought a bloody war so that we could be in charge of ourselves, a government for, of, and by the people. And their interests were aligned with making sure the country functioned properly. The founding fathers were not like, how many morons can we convince to vote for us so that we can do whatever we want? But that's the government we have today. The will of the people has been entirely subverted. Let's just be serious. How many people actually want this war in Ukraine? How many people actually want to fund this insanity? I'm willing to bet it's like no one. Now, of course, you've got blue check Twitterati going out and being like, we should be sending billions more dollars. Lindsey Graham, I love this. He's like, we should be taking the tax credit for electric cars and sending it to Ukraine. What? No. Why? We should give more tax credits for electric cars. I think that's great. You got the oil industry freaking out over Biden because Biden's getting spit on by Saudi Arabia, who's supporting Russia, and he tanked. Look, Joe Biden comes in and he's like, we don't need energy in America, man. Come on. We're going to rely on the Saudis. And then the Saudis are like, we're with Russia. And he's like, come on, man. Now they're mocking him. The U.S. government, they care about you. They want you to have this important life-saving medication. So long as you can lift boxes and mine quarries and do the labor they need to generate the revenue and also be the cannon fodder for their wars. I mean, think about it. If you're not having babies, who are they going to get to join the military to go be the cannon fodder to go fight these imperialist garbage wars like in Afghanistan, which they then botch? Or how about sending people into Ukraine? Oh, yeah, let's play the game, baby. Here we go. We have this from The Intercept from yesterday. The CIA thought Putin would quickly conquer Ukraine. Why did they get it so wrong? Yeah, I don't care about what the CIA thought. I care about this. Here's what The Intercept reports. Yet clandestine American operations inside Ukraine are now far more extensive than they were early in the war. Really? When U.S. intelligence officials were fearful that Russia would steamroll over the Ukrainian army. There is a much larger presence of both CIA and U.S. Special Operations personnel and resources in Ukraine than there were at the time of the Russian invasion in February. Several current and former intelligence officials told The Intercept. So, did we declare war? I can't remember. Did Congress formally declare war? When was the last time they did that? Was that World War II? Secret U.S. operations inside Ukraine are being conducted under a presidential covert action finding. Yeah, okay. We got boots on the ground in Ukraine. We've got this. Here you go, baby. American veterans volunteer to fight in Ukraine. March 5th, 2022. Do you think Vladimir Putin is a stupid man? He may be irrational. He may be angry. He may be smart. I don't know. I think he's probably a smart guy. I would say you'd be dumb to think he wasn't a smart guy. I mean, somebody who's risen to that level of power and prominence, he's got something working for him. Do you think he looks at these stories and he's like, yeah, but, U.S. hasn't formally declared war, so I'm not really at war with the United States? Do you think he's sitting there saying, like, I know that the U.S. has special operations inside Ukraine, that United States citizens are fighting in Ukraine, that the U.S. is providing weapons to Ukraine, and these veterans that volunteered to be there are being armed by the United States, but they're not at war with me, so I can't retaliate. It's just remarkable. The analogy I used the other day is like, imagine there's a dude throwing rocks at you, and you're like, hey, stop throwing rocks at me. And then someone standing behind him, handing him rocks. And then you go, well, I'm not mad at the guy throwing the rocks at me. We're not really fighting. He's just giving rocks to the other guy. No, you'd be like, dude, stop giving that guy rocks. He's throwing them at me. Dude, like, in what world are people led to believe that we are not at war with Russia? I suppose it's all some ridiculous technicality. Can we sue? Maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe we need to file like a major class action lawsuit, take it to the Supreme Court and say, standing, we're American citizens. Our tax dollars are funding this. They're putting money in this. I have standing. I want there to be a legal action. Tell me, courts, that this is not a war the United States is engaged in. I think the federal government will just spit on you and say they can do whatever they want because this country is corrupt. It's unfortunate. It's a great country. I think it's one of the best, if not the best, on the planet. But you see what's happening. It's been happening for a long time. It's been happening slowly over the past 100 years. It is not a problem that we can just snap our fingers and change overnight, but man, is it bad. You need to convince the American people to support your war. Congress did not vote to declare war on Russia. And you mean to tell me you're going to argue this is not an act of war? Fine. Right now, I mean, come on, you'd have to be an insane judge or a corrupt one to not be like, this is war. So you mean to tell me American citizens are on the ground in Ukraine fighting. They are armed by the United States government. They are trained by the United States government. The U.S. has actual intelligence and special operations officially on the ground in Ukraine. They're providing Apache helicopters and other weapons to NATO allies surrounding the conflict and providing them directly to the Ukrainians. Oh, is that 5? 6, the U.S. is providing intelligence being utilized by the Ukrainians. I'll do air quotes for that. By the Ukrainians. And they used that to sink the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. You mean to tell me we're not at war? They're playing this dirty game so they don't have to formally declare. Can we sue or something? Like, what's our redress of grievances to stop this? Can I call a lawyer and be like, hey, can I sue the government to stop the war? Maybe I'll have to do that. Maybe, I got to be honest. I think could probably get tens of millions of signatures or people to sign on to some kind of class action lawsuit or something like that. I don't know. I don't know how you stop something like this. But I'll tell you this. I'll tack on to all of that number 8. The U.S. is now buying up drugs for radiation sickness. Okay, let's say this. Maybe they're not for us. Maybe they do not believe Vladimir Putin is going to nuke the United States. Maybe they're for Ukraine. Ukraine's been prepping, distributing potassium iodide and getting ready evacuation centers in the event that Russia nukes Kiev. Or I think, yes, Russia nukes Kiev. I think that's their target. I think it's possible. I don't know if it's true, but I'll tell you this. If I was at a casino and there was a bunch of stuff on a roulette board and it was like Russia retreats, U.S. retreats, war ends, and then there was one, Vladimir Putin nukes Ukraine, I'd put my money on it. I mean it. You know, look, I bet on a roulette wheel. It's like a 1 in 37 chance your number is going to come up and you win 35 times. Those double zeros, they get you. The 0 and double 0. But double 0. Get out of here with that. But anyway, it doesn't mean I think I'm going to win. Sometimes I do. Number 26. That's my number. And we've got great stories where we're like leaving the casino. We've got like $50 left. And then we're just like, I don't know, whatever. Let's just drop it on 26 and then we win. It's happened twice. And it's like, you know, twice out of what, like 50 times, which is pretty good. Betting on 26. But we lose. Sometimes you lose money. I'm not saying that I think Ukraine will be nuked. I'm saying that I think it's worthy of putting your chips on. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not trying to make light of it. I think Vladimir Putin is going to get boxed in. The U.S. support for Ukraine, the U.S. war with Russia right now, I'm just going to call it that. The U.S. war with Russia is intense. And Russia's getting beat down. And Russia's going to be like, I'm going to call your bluff. I want to see. This is what Putin's going to do. Putin's going to say, I want to see the United States justify a nuclear strike on Russia. The war is in Ukraine right now. Russia is fighting in the Eastern Front. For what reason would the U.S. have to nuke Russia proper? None. That's what Vladimir Putin's going to say. He's going to say, I can strike Kiev, and the U.S. will not be able to justify a nuclear strike on Moscow or any comparable Russian city. It would mean full-scale conventional war. NATO would flood in. But I just don't... Look, Vladimir Putin he already believes he's at war with NATO. What is the difference? If he has to, he will. A nuclear strike on Kiev would be devastating. And it would just rock the Ukrainian fighting force to their core. However, it could potentially allow more direct U.S. military operations in Ukraine. Not that I think it matters. Everybody's kind of just like they're holding back a little bit. The U.S. is already on the ground in Ukraine. So I think it's only a matter of time that we see something like this. In which case, these drugs that they're buying up for radiation sickness, yeah, maybe it's so that they can send to Ukraine. Maybe it's because they think Russia is going to strike Ukraine. They're not going to retaliate with nuclear weapons. They're going to give out these drugs to Ukrainians. I don't know exactly how this plays out. I don't think anybody does. But I think you would be insane not to think that Putin could and would do this. Now, as for striking the United States, yeah, we're ways off from that. But that could be another reality here. Which city do you want to be in? And I was talking about this a few days ago. I think if Putin were to fire a nuke at the United States, first and foremost, I don't think we need to be worried about ICBMs. Maybe a MIRV. A MIRV is a multiple independently targeted re-entry vehicle. It's an ICBM that fires up into the stratosphere and then breaks apart and like 10 to 12 warheads pepper down the eastern seaboard. Okay. But I think we've probably got deterrence. You take a look at the Iron Dome in Israel. They can actually fire up missiles to intercept other missiles. You have THAAD. I can't remember what THAAD stands for, and that's in South Korea. Well, I think it may be in South Korea. I know that a lot of South Koreans are pissed about it. And that's to stop North Korean missiles coming in. You think the U.S. doesn't have the capability of taking out ICBMs in the air? They probably do. But the question, well, I'll throw it to Dr. Manhattan. It's a question of even if they can stop 99.99% of the 50 or 25,000 nukes coming from Russia or however many they have, if one gets through, one, and it's a MIRV dropping all these warheads, it's going to cause untold devastation. Man, it'd be crazy to see. I mean, just the devastation from one ICBM. No, we don't have to worry about those, I don't think. We probably have to worry about, say, Poseidon. Rumor mill, the Poseidon torpedo, a nuclear autonomous torpedo, can blast, has a blast yield up to 100 megatons. If that were to happen, somebody posted this the other day on IRL and Super Chat. If it detonated off of Annapolis, it would flood everything. DC would be wiped out. Baltimore, everything would be hit by a radioactive tsunami. A radioactive tsunami. Now, some reports say the blast yield's only 2 megatons. Still, that's really big. Wasn't Hiroshima, Nagasaki like 15 kilotons? Like really, really small? Is it 15? I think it was 15 kilotons. Like, really? I mean, it's big, but compared to what we got now, that's what I think we have to worry about. And the Belgorod is the Russian nuclear sub. It's been deployed, so they think it's doing testing operations in the Arctic. But you think we know what's going on? This stuff we're talking about right now, we are the chickens. That's the point I was making in the beginning. They care about you like a chicken or a goat. Like you provide milk or eggs for them, but they're going to eat you. Do you think the chickens have any idea what's going on outside that chicken coop? They don't. Their world is so small. And I can sit here and tell you all of this stuff, but you think they're going to let us really know what's happening? For all we know, Russia's already fired a nuke. We don't know. And it was intercepted and destroyed. We wouldn't know. Media lies. And governments, they got weapons you don't even know about. For all we know, a whole bunch of these refinery explosions, industrial catastrophes were cyber attacks. For all we know. And perhaps we never will. I guess I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.